So thank you so much for joining. This is the final January 6th committee hearing. I feel like we've been doing this forever. We kind of have been doing this forever. I think this is the 9th hearing, if I'm not mistaken. So, appreciate all of those who've joined me from the very beginning. This one is going to be a vote for the January 6th committee on whether to send criminal referrals to the Justice Department. We expect the January 6th committee to vote on at least 3 criminal referrals from Trump, and also expecting, by the way, some people are saying that the audio is low, so I'm going to raise that a little bit. So this should be a little bit better. So like I said, we're expecting 3 criminal referral votes for Donald Trump, and that includes for obstructing an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the government, and inciting or assisting an insurrection. So those are the votes that we're expecting for Trump. We're also expecting contempt of Congress referrals for a number of other individuals, including we should also see a criminal referral vote for John Eastman, who is pretty much the architect behind all of this. So we'll expect to see that as well. Now, one thing that's important to recognize here, just like a caveat in all of this, is that the Justice Department doesn't have to accept these criminal referrals. They're being voted on by the January 6th committee, but they're not binding. So we've seen that they have accepted certain referrals for certain people, like Steve Bannon, for example, for a contempt of Congress referral. So Steve Bannon was indicted by the DOJ, and I believe he's serving a prison term right now. The flip side of that is that they sent a criminal referral for someone like Mark Meadows, who the DOJ didn't accept that referral for. There has been no indictment for Mark Meadows. It's possible that he's working with the DOJ, that he's cooperating with the DOJ. We won't know because that's not the kind of stuff that they come out and tell us. So just kind of measuring expectations here, that we can see the January 6th committee vote on these criminal referrals. They can vote on all 3 criminal referrals for Donald Trump. That doesn't necessarily mean that we'll see the DOJ take up anything specifically. These are suggestions to the Department of Justice, but the Department of Justice doesn't take its cues from the January 6th committee, but they're certainly informed by the January 6th committee. So let me raise my gain a little bit here. Okay, so this audio should be a little bit better. I'm keeping my eye on the chat, so just let me know if if you need me to raise this volume even higher. Now, in terms of what we should expect from the DOJ, obviously this investigation has been handed over to Special Counsel Jack Smith. As far as the reporting goes, because this is kind of all we have to rely on right now, we're not getting a lot of insight into the Justice Department, nor do we ever really get insight into the Justice Department. They very rarely give anybody any indication as to how things are going. But the reporting suggests that Jack Smith is moving quickly. He's issued a raft of subpoenas, including, for example, for information regarding the Brad Raffensperger call, the Georgia Secretary of State call where Trump requested 11,780 votes that didn't exist. So I guess we would then ask ourselves, like, if Jack Smith is moving so quickly and finally requesting this information, why didn't Merrick Garland when he was in charge of this investigation? And I don't know the answer to that question, but it would suggest that Merrick Garland wasn't moving quickly enough while he was overseeing all of this. Like the fact that all of this time has gone by, over a year has gone by, almost 2 years at this point have gone by, and we have a crime that was committed so out in the open as Trump requesting 11,780 votes from Brad Raffensperger that didn't exist for the express purpose of overturning a free and fair election in his favor. We would wonder, like, why that kind of information hadn't been looked into by Merrick Garland. I don't have a good answer for that, but I probably share the exact same frustration that you do in terms of kind of lamenting the fact that had taken so long, and if it had been done so out in the open, it would be a layup for Merrick Garland to just have requested that information, requested that recording, for example, and started to have interviews with those players, including Brad Raffensperger. And the fact that it took 2 years in and the appointment of a special counsel to even be able to look into that is doesn't exactly bode well for the speed with which Merrick Garland was moving. And so when I first saw that Jack Smith had been appointed special counsel, my gut instinct is like, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to take such steps to basically validate Republican talking points that Merrick Garland couldn't be impartial? Because of course he could be impartial, but Republicans were, like running around with their heads cut off over what they suggested was the perception of impropriety or partisanship, because Merrick Garland was appointed by Joe Biden, so wouldn't be able to do a fair investigation of Donald Trump. But first of all, yes, he would have. Second of all, appointing a special counsel would kind of validate that talking point. It kind of would lend itself to this idea that, oh yeah, you're right that Merrick Garland wouldn't be able to do it, and so we need someone like Jack Smith. And I'm like, forget about responding to their talking points and their bad faith attacks, because they're going to levy those bad faith attacks onto everyone and anyone. So just instead of worrying about what the right thinks because they're acting in bad faith, just do the job. Just continue these investigations and don't worry about, every time that they say that something doesn't look right, because again, they're acting in bad faith, these are disingenuous attacks. Just do the damn thing and just keep moving forward. But apparently that wasn't in the cards, and so that bothered me, because the way that I viewed this is that we're so worried on the left about seeming like we're not playing by the right's rules, that instead of just doing the thing that we're supposed to be doing, which in this case is just an investigation into someone who is an overt criminal, we're worried about placating the Republican Party, who, by the way, will never be placated, because as soon as something else pops up, even if and when they did give this over to Jack Smith, by the way, they started attacking Jack Smith. They started attacking Jack Smith's family. So at some point, you have to recognize that these attacks aren't being levied in good faith, and just to ignore them and just do the thing that we're supposed to do, which in this case is to investigate Donald Trump for his raft of crimes that he did out in the open. So that was my first reaction to all of this. And I think there came a point where once I started seeing reporting that Jack Smith was then issuing a raft of subpoenas, that he was requesting all of this information, that he was ramping up the speed with which this investigation was being conducted, I'm like, you know what? If he's doing this now, if it took the appointment of Jack Smith to finally get this information, to finally go to Brad Raffensperger and get the recording, for example, of Trump requesting 11,780 votes, then fine. If that's what it took, if it took the appointment of someone else who's not Merrick Garland, then I will gladly accept the fact that Merrick Garland is not doing this for whatever reason, even if it was because he or the DOJ or whoever is incapable of not moving forward without constantly kowtowing to right-wing talking points, whatever. If it means that we get Jack Smith, who's actually moving forward with this thing, and who will pursue all of this justice without fear or favor, then I'll gladly take Jack Smith, because I think that I'm in the same boat as everybody else here watching, which is that we just want to see some movement. And we've heard 1,000 times that if this was anybody else who'd done what Donald Trump did, they would be behind bars so fast that you wouldn't be able to pass go, wouldn't collect $200. So, I think that I'm kind of in the same boat as you, in the sense that I just want to kind of see some movement here, and I think that we do risk losing a lot of faith in our justice system if we don't see some movement, because. Again, just because the crimes were committed out in the open doesn't make them any less egregious than if they were committed like under the cloak of darkness, right? And so, given how illegal everything that we saw was, like him going up to the Georgia Secretary of State and requesting votes that didn't exist for the express purpose of overturning a free and fair election, I think that we just need to see some movement here if we're going to maintain any of that faith in our justice system. So will this result in anything, I guess, is the next question in all of this. And the answer is that I don't know, because we have gotten so many instances where, where Trump has proved like Teflon, right? And so I don't know if this will result in anything. What I can say with some degree of certainty, although I'm not in these rooms, so I don't know what's happening, but what I would imagine, at least what I could say from my own personal belief here, is that it's probably easier, given that Trump is no longer president, and so when we would see him committing these raft of crimes while he's president, we can all run around screaming like lunatics at the fact that he's doing something that is overtly illegal. But the fact is that it's a lot more difficult to move forward with any accountability when the guy is overseeing a Justice Department that was led by Bill Barr, who was a Trump appointee. And so, even like with the Mueller report that was released, you'd have Bill Barr doing Trump's bidding, basically, and just misrepresenting the contents of the Mueller report and saying that the Mueller report, for example, completely and totally exonerates him, which is not at all what the Mueller report says. But in any case, will this result in anything? Probably easier, given the fact that he's no longer president and doesn't basically control the levers of power. And B, there are other probes bearing down on him. And so we have the Mar-a-Lago stolen documents investigation that's also being overseen by Jack Smith. We have the Fulton County investigation into Brad Raffensperger and Donald Trump's phone call where he asked for those 11,780 votes to be found. We have the New York AG's investigation into the Trump Organization. The Trump Organization was found guilty of tax fraud, and so that's basically a death knell for the Trump org. Now we have Tish James will continue that investigation. I believe there's going to be investigation into Donald Trump and his kids themselves as we look forward to that Alvin Bragg investigation, the criminal case for the Trump org. So there are other probes bearing down on Donald Trump right now, and so I think that when you have this investigation, this January 6th investigation headed up by Jack Smith, having all of those other investigations bearing down on him and getting closer to accountability there, it's not like this is the only one. And so I had an interview with former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner, and he explained that it will be difficult to see the first indictment passed down, but once we see that first indictment, the rest will fall like dominoes. And so, we're getting close on a number of these. The Trump org probe is obviously moving forward super quickly, and it doesn't look like the Fulton County one is slowing down either. So hopefully that bodes well. Again, I can't say definitively one way or the other, because we have seen this guy slip away from being held accountable in the past. That's pretty much what his identity is predicated on at this point. So who knows what we'll see moving forward. But I at least I can speak from my own beliefs here, and that is that we will see something come out of this. That I do believe that we'll see the Department of Justice accept these criminal referrals from the January 6th committee, and hopefully see some type of indictment passed down from the DOJ. So again, that's something that we'll keep an eye on. And you know what? If I had to give my honest opinion here, it is that Trump probably believes the same thing. And, I personally think that that's why he announced his candidacy. I think that's why he did it so early. I think it was two reasons. Probably three reasons. One was he sees that pretty much the entire Republican Party has begun granting Ron DeSantis the heir apparency within the GOP. And I think that he just needed to do something to claw back some of the attention. I think that's one. I think that second is he was looking for a way to just continue making money, and if the news cycle is kind of moving away from him, which it has been, and he wants to be able to continue that open spigot to his supporters where he would basically, just continue to accept money, then he needs to keep himself relevant, and by announcing his candidacy for president, he keeps himself relevant. So that's the second one. And the third one is right here, is to escape legal jeopardy. And he thinks that by virtue of announcing his candidacy, that he can just debut the defense that, okay, well, any attempt to charge or indict me is just going to be is just going to be because Joe Biden and the evil communist Democrats want to take me down because they know I'm the front runner for the Republican nomination in 2024. And so you couldn't possibly charge me, because then you're just meddling in the next election. You're just using the levers of power to take down a political opponent, and that's banana republic shit. And so the reality, of course, in all of this is that just by retroactively, by like announcing your candidacy to try to shield yourself from an investigation that's already been going on for a couple of years is not gonna, be a valid defense in terms of why that investigation shouldn't move forward any longer. But it's not like his supporters believe that, and it's not like that's gonna stop him from promoting that talking point anyway, because he will. So he thinks that this is going to like act as some kind of a shield for him as we move forward, that now because he's announced his candidacy for 2024, now you couldn't possibly have any government official looking at him, looking into an investigation of him, or investigating him rather, because then we're just meddling in the next election. We're just trying to use the powers of government to take out Joe Biden's top political opponent, and that's clearly not allowed. So I think that that's why he did it. I don't think that he's into running for president. Here's why. It's because I give two reasons right now in terms of why he's not into this right now. The first reason is that his announcement speech was so droning and boring when he first announced, 3-4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, I can't remember at this point, but it was so boring and uninspired that Fox News actually cut away from the thing. To have Fox News, who's the network that's basically predicated its entire identity on its fealty to Donald Trump over the last 6 years, to have them cut away from your presidential announcement speech is a testament to the fact that speech really sucked. Like, if Fox News couldn't stay on that speech long enough to just carry it in full, that they had to bring someone in, and I was live streaming when it happened, so I was like, oh, well, Fox News cut away, so I guess that's the end of that speech. I'm not gonna seek it out. If Fox News isn't even carrying it, I don't think I'm gonna have a lot of options in terms of who's carrying this thing. But if he couldn't pull together an event that was kind of exciting enough so that to even keep Fox News on it, I think that shows the extent to which his heart isn't in it this time, and also that he's not really capable of he's kind of a one-trick pony in the sense that when he came out 5 years ago and was doing the grievance politics things about this and that, immigration and water pressure and light bulbs and whatever else he would talk about at these rallies, I guess it was exciting enough that people couldn't look away, and he'd curse and he'd be brash and this and that, and then people kind of adapted to it and they got used to it, and it stopped grabbing everybody's attention. And so you would think, if this guy was the genius of marketing that he claims to be, that he would see that and say okay, this isn't working anymore. What we did in season 1 isn't working anymore. We have to make it better for season 2, right? This is just simple stuff. And you would think that if this guy's a marketing genius, like he's been anointed by the press, then he would at least understand that, and he would say, okay, we have to change things for season 2 to get people back watching this stuff. What worked then isn't going to work now. But he hasn't, and so I don't know if he's incapable of adapting, maybe Trump just cursing and insulting women and whining about immigrants and water pressure and dead birds at windmills. Maybe that worked, and he isn't capable of anything else because that's the only channel that he has, or he just doesn't care enough to do it because this wasn't about anything other than just trying to shield himself from some investigations and trying to bilk his supporters for some money. So maybe that's a major element of this in terms of why his heart isn't in this, that he isn't even trying to adapt and try to draw people in to make them kind of more excited for the next iteration of a Trump presidency, that he's just kind of leaning on the same bullshit that he leaned on the first term, to the point where it's who can listen to him talk about flushing a toilet for the 900th time. And the second piece of evidence I think that supports that claim is this NFT collection release. It's like, you know, how do I put this? I think that there is just such a shamelessness with which he debuted this entire NFT collection release that that it kind of proves the fact that he doesn't care. Like, this isn't the sign of a healthy campaign when the first quote-unquote major announcement that you've teased since announcing your candidacy, which a lot of people thought would be him announcing a running mate, announcing maybe another run in like as an independent, some major policy plank, something, because he teased it that way. Because when Donald Trump comes forward and says, I have a major announcement, nobody in their right mind wouldn't assume that this is going to be non-political. And you definitely wouldn't assume that it's just going to be him bilking his supporters for $99 for JPEGs of him being an astronaut on the moon. And so like, so he did this on purpose, knowing that this would rile up his supporters, knowing that this would get people excited because they want, you know, his supporters want him to run for president, want him to succeed as a politician. And so he knew that making this announcement would get them excited about something political. And like the shamelessness with which he didn't even acknowledge politics and instead just introduced this shameless, naked money grab from his own supporters. Literally, we're talking about JPEGs. We're talking about like computer images, and he just wanted $100 for a badly photoshopped picture of him in the Wild Wild West, or him wearing a Men's Warehouse suit, because that's what it was. One of the pictures with him wearing a tuxedo and him like doing this was just a Men's Warehouse ad that he stole, cropped his head onto, and then decided to sell for $99 as if his supporters desperately needed this, as if that's what they were waiting for. And so, you know, I don't think this is the sign of a healthy campaign. I think that when things are going well in a campaign, you don't make a major announcement that has nothing to do with politics and just everything to do with a naked cash grab. And I say naked cash grab for him because none of this money even went to his political campaign. In the fine print, when it said, does this money go toward the Donald J. Trump, for president fund or whatever it was, it said no. This fund has this money, the money that we raised doing this NFT trading card collection, has nothing to do with Donald J. Trump for president or any political campaign. This is just to give him money. That's all it was. And so, you know, I don't think any of his supporters who were hoping for something political can like look at this and feel good about that, feel good about like the brazenness with which he was just bilking his supporters for money. He was basically just saying, my big announcement is that I want to make money from you people, and you're gonna give me that money. That's my big announcement here. So I don't think any of his supporters see that and like felt good about that afterwards. I mean, some do, because you know they hang on his every word, and it's just a cult. So you know, him grifting his supporters is not breaking news here. But the second thing is that he's, you know, very clearly not into running for president, and to the extent to which he's made no effort to be in the news other than just to say like, hey, I just want to make some money today for myself that has nothing to do with politics, which is presumably why all of you people follow me and why all of you people have supported my candidacies, because you want to see me in some, you know, in some political light or moving forward with some political something. So, you know, I think that NFT release was kind of telling. And look, do I think that this is going to be what takes Donald Trump down? No. I don't think that, like, his supporters are finally going to say, like, wait a minute, this guy, we're starting to think that he's a grifter. I think that if you've supported Donald Trump, there is no doubt about the extent to which the guy is a grifter, and you've accepted that and just said, well, you know, like he's a billionaire, and he's been clear about the fact that he's a billionaire, and that's why we love him so much, because he's got such a good business mind, and he's gonna use that power to help us. He's been selfish thus far, like all the bullshit that he said leading into 2016. So I don't think like him being a grifter is going to be some major revelation for his supporters, but at the same time, I do imagine that you would have some degree of those supporters who were hoping for, for their savior to come forward and to have some major announcement, because to show that he cares about all of this, to show that, he's still into it, and that he wants to have a fighting chance. And so maybe he's announcing a VP selection. Maybe he's announcing some major policy plank, although policy plank and Donald Trump, I think, are if there was a Venn diagram, you could fly a 777 through the space between Donald Trump and announcing a major policy plank. But they wanted to see something, and then to just kind of get like hit in the face with a request for money after he hyped them up. If these elections are won on the margins and every vote counts, and you're Donald Trump and you're already shedding supporters, and you're already seeing someone like Ron DeSantis or whoever else in the Republican Party kind of take the news cycle from you, to then just go forward and basically say, I'm going to use all of this political capital I've gained from this big event that I've hyped up, and just empty some of my supporters' wallets for just me personally. I think that speaks volumes, and that says a lot about the state of his campaign right now. So, I think that if Donald Trump is doing well and he's the clear front runner for the 2024 nomination with no one else in his rearview mirror, I don't think that you come forward and just basically try to bilk your supporters for $100 a pop. I just can't imagine that that's something we'd see. And I say that knowing full well that Donald Trump has always grifted his supporters, that there's nothing he can't, that there's nothing he wouldn't do to just like make a buck from these people. And that goes for the ecosystem more broadly. I mean, even Steve Bannon took his supporters for a bunch of cash with the We Build the Wall campaign, which didn't go to building the wall. It went like into their pockets. So, again, grifting is nothing new on the right, but I still can't imagine that you look at this and say, like, I feel good about the way that my campaign is going right now, to the point where I'm going to use my one event that I've hyped up and hyped up as some major announcement. And a lot of those people responded that way. Like a lot of these right-wingers were pissed about this, because anybody with 2 eyes and 2 ears could recognize that this is not, like, this doesn't help anybody other than just Trump's bottom line. And so a lot of these people were waiting for something like waiting for something significant to happen. And when it didn't, even like I was watching a Newsmax clip of the announcement, and it was so despairing and so like unenthused and just like just sad. The entire time they were just sad while announcing it, because there's no way you don't look like a fool. If you're a Trump supporter, if you're like someone who's predicated their entire political identity on fealty to that guy, and he comes forward with such an embarrassing, shameless way to handle all of this, I don't think that you don't recognize how much of a fool you look like when you hang your hat on that guy. So someone asked, how can the NFTs be sold out? Aren't they virtual JPEGs? How are there not an infinite supply? That's a good question, and I have no idea. I have no idea what the answer is. What I would imagine happened is that they had a really dismal response to them, and so they're just announcing that they're sold out, and so to give the impression that this thing was a success. Do I think it was a success? Not at all. I think that people recognize that they don't need to pay $100 to purchase poorly photoshopped JPEGs, and they might have sold a few. I'm sure they had no problem bilking a few of their supporters, but I can't imagine anybody in their right mind doling out $100 for this, especially in an era that Republicans have done their best to exploit, which is that there are high prices and high inflation right now. And so when you're complaining about every time eggs go up by a nickel, and as if that's the end of the world, which is not to say that inflation and high prices don't hurt, because they do, but to then, at the same time, in the same breath that you've said that these high prices and this high inflation is so painful, to then turn around and say, hey, how would you also like to spend $100 on nothing, on a picture of Donald Trump on the moon? Then I think that really undermines your entire argument here. So I'm sure that they didn't sell out. I'm sure there is. First of all, there's no way to sell out. Again, these are JPEGs. They go forever. But of course they didn't sell out. I think that they just had a few people buy them, recognize that this thing was an abject failure, not just from a product stance, because what are these things, but also from like a PR stance, because what are you doing? And they just announced that it was a great success. Thank you so much. We're completely sold out of these JPEGs that are literal computer images and can't be sold out. Also, I believe that you had to have a functioning crypto wallet, like an actual crypto wallet, to be able to purchase these things. What do you think the overlap between Trump supporters and owning a crypto wallet is? Like, what do you think that Venn diagram looks like? I was talking about before a Venn diagram that you could fly a 777 through. What do you think this one looks like? These Trump supporters in like owning a crypto wallet. So I don't know, man, but I think that the whole limited stockness of all of this of this NFT collection that sold out and was this great success is just more PR bullshit from Donald Trump. I think that it's pretty clear that they sold what few digital trading cards they sold, and the rest was just them pretending as if this whole thing was a great success, and now they'll put it behind them. They put a little cash in Donald Trump's pocket, which is at the end of the day the only important thing for Donald Trump, and now they'll move forward with continuing to try to avoid any accountability for his crimes or running his quasi campaign for president. So, with that said, we are less than half an hour away from this January 6th committee hearing. I would request for anybody watching right now, if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. That is the best way to support what I do. It doesn't cost you anything. I do memberships on this channel, but honestly, the best way to support my work is to just hit the subscribe button. That's free, and I do breaking news videos every day. I do live streams for big events like this one when they're important. I do a legal series with Glenn Kirshner, who is a former federal prosecutor, 2-3 times a week, where we discuss everything that's going on. So we're going to get together later on today and post a video onto this channel to discuss what the January 6th committee has done today. We're going to discuss any referrals that they do or don't vote on, which I presume they will vote on and approve to send to the DOJ for both Trump and probably John Eastman and other people who participated in January 6th. So I do that legal series with Glenn Kirshner. There is a ton of legal news there. So if you have any questions about how this process plays out from that perspective, this is definitely a good series to keep an eye on. And finally, I do interviews with people. So today, I'm also going to be releasing an interview with MSNBC primetime host Alex Wagner, who took over for Rachel Maddow. That was a great interview, and I have interviews coming up in the very near future with both Chris Cuomo, so that'll be a really exciting one, and Jamie Raskin from the January 6th committee. So definitely subscribe to this channel so you can keep an eye on all of that stuff. You can hit the subscribe button so that you can be notified when my videos come out. I don't do too many videos, just 1 or 2 a day usually at most. So I try to make them as high quality as I can here, but you won't get spam, so I promise you that. For those of you just joining, the January 6th committee final hearing is going to start in about 30 minutes here, less than 30 minutes, about 25 minutes here. They're expected to make at least 3 criminal referrals to the Justice Department for Donald Trump, and that'll be for obstructing an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the government, and inciting or assisting an insurrection. They've also considered contempt of Congress referrals for other members of the Trump administration, other high-profile Republicans who've ignored subpoenas. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Mark Meadows. They've already sent a criminal referral for him, and the DOJ didn't take that one. So we'll see if they're going to do anything else with him. They're obviously going to vote on one for John Eastman, who's largely viewed as the architect of this whole plan to subvert the election results. We heard in the January 6th committee hearing about John Eastman that he basically brought forward this idea that the Trump administration would be able to move forward with basically telling Mike Pence that he could unilaterally decide whether or not to accept the election results in an election that he himself was a part of. This is obviously not the case. Even John Eastman himself said that he thinks this thing would lose 9-0 in the Supreme Court. So he was pushing an idea that he himself knew wasn't based on anything constitutional. It was just him basically, attempting to do what he could to subvert the election results, knowing full well the illegality of that scheme. And so we largely expect there will be some type of criminal referral sent for John Eastman. We'll find out shortly if there's going to be referrals for other officials who were, involved in any way in January 6th. I know there were obviously a lot of people that were involved in this entire process who we haven't seen any accountability for. So we'll see what happens on that front here. There is also information about preliminary findings from the D.C. bar that Rudy Giuliani has committed ethical violations, and so they've. We'll see if this moves forward in terms of their final findings, but the preliminary findings suggest that Rudy Giuliani may be disbarred in D.C. because of his participation in all of these efforts to overturn the 2020 election, these court cases to overturn the 2020 election. My last interview with Glenn Kirshner, my last episode of The Legal Breakdown with Glenn Kirshner, we discussed Rudy Giuliani and the potential for him being disbarred now that we have those preliminary findings from the DC bar. So definitely take a look at that episode. It's just go right down to the playlist where it says Legal Breakdown. It's the most recent video. A lot of good information there about Rudy Giuliani and whether he'll be disbarred when we get those final results, which we do expect him to appeal, because the Trump team is no shortage of appealing, any efforts of accountability. But not a great sign when the DC bar is calling for you to be disbarred. Someone's asking, did I watch the World Cup? It was insane. Yes, watch the World Cup. I think I was very unpopular in rooting for France, but I lived in France and I went to a bunch of soccer games there, or football games there, and it was great. So I kind of had to root for France for that one. I had to help my friends back home, where I used to live, although that didn't seem to do them much good. Given the other referrals to the DOJ that have gone nowhere, even if the committee makes them, what do we think the DOJ will do with them? That's a good question. I covered that earlier when I first started the stream. The DOJ doesn't have to follow these criminal referrals, doesn't have to accept these criminal referrals. They hadn't for someone like Mark Meadows, but they have for someone like for someone like Steve Bannon. So what the DOJ does with these referrals doesn't rest on whether they're sent. These are just suggestions. They're not binding in any way for the DOJ, but the DOJ, they can inform what the DOJ does. And so obviously the DOJ and the January 6th committee are aligned in the sense that they're looking for accountability for what happened on January 6th. So it would lend itself to reason that they would accept these referrals from the January 6th committee, that they would follow these referrals for the January 6th committee. But at the end of the day, the DOJ and the special counsel investigation are completely independent of any political branch of government or this January 6th committee itself. So they don't have to do anything. I would imagine that after this exhaustive investigation that they will accept the findings and that they will move forward with some type of charge or indictment. I think it would be kind of insane not to. But look, I've been surprised in the past at the extent to which people are just allowed to escape without accountability in this country. So we'll see what happens. But if I had to guess, for whatever that's worth, which may be nothing at all, I anticipate that they will accept the findings of these criminal referrals sent from the January 6th committee. So someone's asking what the referrals were. The committee is expected to make at least 3 criminal referrals for Trump, and that's obstructing an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the government, and inciting or assisting an insurrection. Those are the referrals being voted on today by the January 6th committee. In less than 20 minutes here. Casey asked, will Adam Schiff submit criminal referrals for 5 other congressmen to the Justice Department or to House committees since they will be Republican run? Look, the January 6th committee, I don't think we should expect the January 6th committee to exist beyond beyond today, beyond this Congress. I can't imagine that a Republican-led House of Representatives is going to continue this investigation, is going to continue this January 6th committee, unless they figure out a way to tie Hunter Biden's laptop into all of this and make this about that. But otherwise, I think that there's a reason that they're submitting their final report today, that they're doing these votes on this today, and that is that they're wrapping up their work and they're going to release their final report. I think that that's what we should expect, and that this committee's work will be finished, and now it's going to be in the hands of the DOJ and Jack Smith and the special counsel to decide what to do moving forward. I mean, at this point, we know everything that we need to know to some extent, right? So what they do with this information, I mean, we can't just investigate this forever. There comes a point when it's clear who's responsible for this and what they've done every step of the way, and that's what we've found over these last few months with the January 6th committee. That's why they're voting on these criminal referrals today for Donald Trump. That's why they're going to vote on this criminal referral for John Eastman, who is the architect of all of this. He was the guy, the brains behind all of this, who said that Mike Pence could somehow unilaterally decide whether or not he votes to certify the election of Donald Trump and himself, which is complete BS, but that didn't stop him from doing it anyway. So I think that this is it. I mean, there's really no need for the January 6th committee to continue to exist beyond this because they've done their work. And so, now comes the point where it's kind of like shit or get off the pot. And hopefully we see something from Jack Smith to that extent where we finally do have some indictments from the DOJ, but I don't anticipate we'll see them right away, but reporting suggests that he's moving quickly, that he's moving a lot more quickly than Merrick Garland, that we're seeing, a raft of subpoenas being handed down, that we're seeing grand juries being called in, and so we'll see what happens in terms of like how quickly Jack Smith moves and whether or not we see them accept these contempt referrals for Trump associates and also obstructing an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the government, assisting in an insurrection. We'll see if those are accepted by the DOJ. So, but at this point, we don't really need the January 6th committee beyond this because they've done their jobs. It's going to be up to the DOJ to do their jobs now. With the sheer amount of laws outright ignored in favor of the Republican Party, what's to stop any charges that hypocritically stick from being dismissed by the very biased Supreme Court? So the Supreme Court wouldn't be able to weigh in on this. This will be up to the DOJ as to whether they're going to bring these charges forward. I can't imagine a world in which the Supreme Court does weigh in. I suppose they may be able to. I mean, that's a question that I would have to ask Glenn, and I am speaking with him later today. So maybe that's something that I'll bring up if ultimately at the end of the day the Supreme Court does have some say in all of this. But that's a lot of steps in the future. We've also seen the Supreme Court weigh in on January 6th related stuff and or election related stuff or Trump's efforts to subvert the Constitution, and even they have weighed in not in his favor. So I don't necessarily think that the Supreme Court is some huge stopgap, huge silver bullet for Donald Trump, because even with that Texas lawsuit to overturn the election results in 4 other states, the Supreme Court didn't touch that thing. And in fact, there was a number of Trump judges, I believe 9 Trump judges, who voted not in Trump's favor when his team brought these fraud cases before the courts. And in fact, every court in over 60 cases pretty much said that there was no way that Trump would win any of those cases. So I don't know that the judiciary has been some major point of weakness for accountability. I think that actually the judicial system has been pretty helpful in terms of upholding all of our laws. All right, so it looks like we've got our feed now. I'll keep an eye on this feed right now, and as soon as we have something go live, then we'll go full screen on that. Someone asked, how is the new legal series being received, and any future goals or plans for your channel? That's a good question. Everyone seems to love the legal series. Those videos are generally reaching about 1 million people per video, so which is good, and it shows that there's a thirst for understanding what's happening and just kind of understanding what's happening and presenting that information in layman's terms. So I think people definitely want to know the legal landscape here, because a lot of this stuff, look, a lot of us don't have legal backgrounds. We want to know how all of this kind of shakes out, what can happen, where it can be appealed to, or the extent to which it can be appealed, whether it's final, what the punishments are. So that's all the stuff that Glenn and I touch upon in our series. In terms of future plans for the channel, I kind of do want to just continue staying on the course, and we're going to see a lot of this legal stuff play out, especially. So definitely going to keep on top of the legal stuff on this channel. Look, this channel was never like completely supposed to be like predicated on Donald Trump. And over the last few years, before Trump did come back in the news, I made a really concerted effort not to make it about him, because there was plenty of other stuff going on. And I didn't need to make it about him. He's obviously back in the news now, so I'll cover him when it's important, and I won't when it's not. But this isn't, I do make a concerted effort to talk about what's important and not just try to lean on Donald Trump. This was never supposed to be that. But the legal news, I think, is important. I'll continue interviewing people who I think are interesting to hear from. For those who missed it before, today I'll have an interview coming out with Alex Wagner, who's the MSNBC host who took over for Rachel Maddow, the primetime host there. And next week I'll be interviewing both Chris Cuomo and Jamie Raskin. So definitely, if you haven't yet had a chance to subscribe to this channel, definitely throw me a subscribe. That's the best way to support what I do. If hypothetically charges go through and some sort of Hanukkah miracle sticks, how, if at all, could the Republican Party recover from enabling this madman? Do we think they will even try? No, I don't think that they'll try. I think that the Republican Party enables a lot of madmen. I think that's pretty much the Republican brand at this point. So, they may try to distance themselves to some degree, but a lot of their politics are just based on grievance politics anyway. And so they're going to not frame this as, oh, you're right, Donald Trump is guilty. They're going to frame this as, oh, this is a witch hunt from the evil communist Democrats who want to destroy America and have open borders. Like, they're going to lean in and double down and triple down, because that's what they do. They never admit fault because that's not in their DNA, and Donald Trump didn't admit fault, and it's kind of like monkey see, monkey do, and so because he didn't admit fault with anything, they're not going to either, and so it's just going to be a perpetual fight. And so that's why you can't play into kind of the bad faith talking points, because they're going to always put forward those bad faith talking points. They're going to always continue this fight, and so I think we just got to keep our eye on the ball and just do what's right instead of trying to placate people who are just kind of in it for the wrong reasons. And so yeah, I think that's what I think on that. How is it possible, with so many laws broken, that the former president has not yet been charged? Well, when he was president, a lot of them were relying on this OLC memo, this Office of Legal Counsel memo that says that a sitting president can't be indicted. So that would explain a lot of the lack of accountability while he was president. Now that he's not president, we're in the same boat. And hopefully these investigations are going to rectify a lot of failing to hold him accountable. Again, I mentioned this at the top, but there are investigations into January 6th being held by the special counsel. There's the Mar-a-Lago documents case also being overseen by the special counsel. There's the Fulton County investigation in Georgia into Trump requesting 11,780 votes from Brad Raffensperger. There's the Trump Organization criminal and civil probe in New York. So a lot of these investigations are bearing down. Whether we'll see something come out of any of them is another question. I mentioned this at the top as well, but Glenn Kirshner, who's my co-host for the Legal Breakdown, he basically said, it's going to be a lot to get somebody to hand down an indictment, but once an indictment is handed down, the rest will fall like dominoes, and they're all kind of in this holding pattern, or hopefully moving forward to some degree, but we haven't seen anything yet. But a lot of these investigations are kind of looking like they're at their conclusion, and so I think as soon as we do see one indictment in any of these investigations, all of a sudden we'll see indictments in all of these investigations. Luck Dragon says, it always amazes me how Republicans accuse Democrats of being communists, which explains why they want to control education to limit knowledge that they themselves are projecting. That is, the irony here is, and I tweeted about this the other day, how the right's new hero is the right, which decries communism on a minute-by-minute basis, now has some new hero in Elon Musk on Twitter, who is immediately banning journalists and just wants to kind of suppress any dissent. And by the way, that's what Donald Trump did on when he did that photo op at the church outside of the White House there, and called in the military to suppress any dissent. And so like we constantly are being on the left called communists, and yet when you see the exact same tactics that are actually employed by those on the right, it kind of puts on full display the extent to which they're projecting on most of this stuff. And so I just think that the irony isn't lost on anybody there. But for those just joining, because we are just a couple of minutes away, and I see these people joining now that we're just a few minutes away. We are expecting the January 6th committee to make at least 3 criminal referrals today for Donald Trump to the Department of Justice, and that is for obstructing an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the government, and inciting or assisting an insurrection. They're also considering contempt of Congress referrals for a number of other members, and we should expect to see a criminal referral for John Eastman, for example, who was the architect for all of this, and for Pence not to certify the election results on January 6th, which was the point of all of these actions, the I guess the impetus, like what they wanted to accomplish by sending this mob of people to the White House on January 6th, was to kind of pressure Mike Pence into, quote, doing the right thing and refusing to certify the election results, which he was not allowed to do because his role was perfunctory, but they didn't care about that. Also, we should see the Electoral Count Act passed that would kind of reiterate the extent to which the vice president's role is ceremonial, and that he doesn't have the ability to unilaterally decide whether he or she won the election that he or she is on the ballot for. So we're about 5 minutes away here. We'll see. We obviously do expect the January 6th committee to vote in favor of recommending these charges to the Department of Justice. What the Department of Justice does from there is still remains to be seen. Jack Smith has been moving forward reportedly at a quicker pace with this investigation than Merrick Garland, who was overseeing this investigation prior. We know that because, for example, Jack Smith was the first one since he took over just a few weeks back to request information regarding Brad Raffensperger and Donald Trump's call about 11,780 votes and finding those votes that didn't exist. Why Merrick Garland hadn't requested that information is beyond me, but and we can sit here and lament Merrick Garland's handling of this until the sun goes down, but the fact is that Jack Smith is requesting this information, and so hopefully this faster pace with which he's moving forward with all of this stuff kind of bodes well for the speed that we're going to see here. So and hopefully it's a lot faster than what we saw from Merrick Garland. So it can't be much slower. So there's that at least. Okay, we are about 3 minutes away, and January 6th committee usually does start on time. This will be the last hearing. I expect that the Republicans, when they take over the House, will disband this committee, so I don't think that they have any intention of trying to remain or keeping any work for that Republican Congress to take forward, because they know that they're not going to do any of it unless any of that work revolves around Hunter Biden's laptop. So this will be the last we hear from the January 6th committee. I'm getting Jamie Raskin on this channel later this week or next week, so definitely, if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, hit the subscribe button if you want to hear from Jamie Raskin, and feel free to send questions over as well. If you want to email me, you can do it right from my website, briantylercohen.com. You can shoot me any message you want. So if you have a question that you want me to ask Jamie Raskin, definitely send that over, and I'll make sure to ask him when I speak to him later this week. Okay, so looks like we are starting momentarily here. For those just joining, thank you for joining. We're getting started any second with this final January 6th committee hearing. Here, the January 6th committee will vote on criminal referrals to the Justice Department. They're voting on at least 3 criminal referrals from Donald Trump. They're expected to vote in favor of sending them to the DOJ, and that includes obstructing an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the government, and inciting or assisting an insurrection. We'll also see votes for Trump accomplices, including, I expect, John Eastman. We'll see a criminal referral sent to the DOJ for him as well. Jamie Raskin has been pretty forthright in saying that Trump didn't act alone. He said, quote, "There's significant evidence of the fact that Eastman was part of this conspiracy, and it is now clear that this conspiracy involved many more people other than Dr. Eastman." So that's all information that we'll get right now as soon as this hearing begins. And by the way, I know that a lot of people in the comments, even right now, are saying that they're not optimistic that Trump will be charged, and I get that. I absolutely get that, but I do think that the whole point of this is that it is coming to a head, that we are going to see some type of movement. Look, you know, I obviously don't know what's happening at the Justice Department. I don't know what's happening within the special counsel's investigation. I don't think that they would jump through all of these hoops to ultimately do nothing. I think that Trump is, you know, he's not president anymore. He's weaker than he's ever been. There isn't this broad swath of support for the guy, because I think that they recognize that this accountability is coming, and he's weak even within the Republican Party. So, you know, I don't think the political pressure is there. I think that they wouldn't have gone through all of these steps of appointing the special counsel, continuing their work on the January 6th committee, getting all of these ducks in a row to basically do nothing. That doesn't mean that they can't. You know, I don't think it would surprise anybody if nothing happens, because I think that that's kind of what we're expecting for all of this stuff as far as Donald Trump is concerned. But I think that, you know, if I just had to guess using my own judgment here, is that we will see something from the special counsel probe. I don't think that they go through all of these steps and see all of this kind of irrefutable evidence and this case basically put forward by the J6 committee to just do nothing with it. So, you know, that's just my opinion. Take with it what you will, but I do expect that we'll see some type of indictment against Donald Trump as far as Jack Smith and the special counsel investigation is concerned. Okay, we're about 3 minutes past the hour. So any second now we should expect this committee hearing to begin. This is the final January 6th committee hearing. I appreciate if you've watched all of them on my channel. I've hosted all of these committee hearings, so it's kind of nice that we can finally wrap this up and bookend these. So again, any second now, they're usually pretty punctual. And again, for those who want to hear more from Jamie Raskin, who is one of the January 6th committee members, subscribe to this channel, because I'll be interviewing him later this week. So that's an interview that's going to come out. And if you have questions for Jamie, just go to my website, briantylercohen.com, and write to me, and I receive those messages, and I'll make sure to ask him any questions that you want to hear the answers to.
And running just a bit behind schedule, but expected to start shortly, the last public meeting of the January 6th committee. It'll be presenting its findings on the attack on the U.S. Capitol. It's been reported the committee's also planning to make criminal referrals to the Justice Department based on evidence it's collected from more than 1,000 witnesses. Some of those witnesses who testified in public over the course of the committee's year-and-a-half-long investigation will be appearing today. A reminder, if you missed any of the previous hearings, or if you want to watch them again, visit our webpage, cspan.org/January6.
We should be starting any second now. They're usually pretty punctual. We are about 6 minutes past the hour. So any moment now, the January 6th committee will get started. There we go. Committee's entering the room. Before we get started, which is going to be a few seconds away. Again, if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel and you want to continue watching major events like this, whether it's live streams or interviews or trending stories, please subscribe to my channel. It doesn't cost you anything. It's the best way to support what I do, and I would really appreciate it. Okay, with that said, I'm going to raise the volume here on these guys, and we'll get started. Okay, so that's it. They have voted. They voted to transmit these criminal referrals to the DOJ. Was one, making it one, that it's a crime to obstruct an official proceeding. Another, that it's a crime to conspire to defraud the United States. Another, as we expected, making it a crime to assist or aid and comfort an insurrection to the United States. So those they voted unanimously. Those will now be transmitted to the DOJ. What the DOJ ultimately decides to do remains to be seen. You know, we've seen that Jack Smith, the special counsel, has been moving expeditiously in this investigation. So I expect that he'll, you know, take these referrals from the January 6th committee. I don't believe. Look, we have a lot of evidence to suggest that the DOJ isn't going to do anything because it's Donald Trump, and we've seen that in the past. But it seems that Jack Smith is moving in a different direction than we've seen in the past, that he's moving quickly, that he's even sought information regarding Brad Raffensperger and the 11,780 votes that hadn't been sought prior. So it seems like he's moving in a specific direction to actually see some accountability here. Obviously, whether that actually bears itself out remains to be seen, but you know, if just judging on my opinion for what that's worth, and it may not be worth much, I would anticipate that we will see some type of indictment by the DOJ, that they will take the fruits of this months-long project from the January 6th committee, this bipartisan January 6th committee that, again, includes members from both parties, Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, and a number of Democratic members as well, and kind of not disregard all of that information that was brought forward by them. So, you know, again, for what it's worth, I do anticipate that we'll see some type of indictment from the DOJ as far as Trump is concerned. They made a compelling case. They made pretty much an irrefutable case. The evidence was overwhelming and perfectly laid out. So I would anticipate that we will see something. Again, take that with a grain of salt. I hope that there's no issue with my sound right here. Up my volume. Okay, so with that said, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. I have a dog that's barking for me, but thank you for watching. And if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please consider subscribing. It's a great way to support what I do. So with that said, thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.